Hi guys, it's Dom from eSports News UK here. Today I'm joined by Joe Fenny, caster from ESL UK. How's it going, Joe?
I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm glad to be on the show and talk about the Premiership that's finally coming up.
Exactly. I'm super excited. It's finally come around again. So maybe Joe, you could start by telling us, who your sort of standout team was for each of the games. Should we go through each game? Should we start with League of Legends and then move on to the others?
Yep, sure,
Yeah.
no problem.
So,
Um, so this season, the formats have changed a little bit, as you guys are probably aware at this stage, and we've had what's called Contender Cups, which are essentially our qualifiers for this season. And if you look at the Contender Cups, the actual rankings right now, we've got a couple of favourites when it comes to League of Legends. We've got TCA and M&M, which are both organisations that have been in the UK scene for quite a while now, but they've never really been organisations that have been at the very top of the list. So it's going to be an interesting season for both of these teams. And obviously M&M just had a pretty big win at Insomnia for themselves. And TCA were in the final against them. So I think over the course of the season, it's going to be the story of M&M and TCA kind of battling it out between each other. And then you've got XL as well, which XL have got some seriously good talent on their team. And the likes of, they've got Scudzy, they've got Jokerism, they've got Tolkien in the top lane as well. So XL could be kind of a dark horse team that kind of comes on through, but so far in the Contender Cups, we haven't seen that just yet.
yeah, definitely. And from the Contender Cups, are there any sort of memorable moments that stood out for you in League?
I can't think of any in terms of like big plays necessarily, but I would say we've seen a lot more kind of highlight moments at Insomnia, but it's kind of the same team. So I kind of like that we've had Insomnia right before this Premiership, because it's almost like a preview of what you're going to be able to see during this season of the Premiership. And there's going to be, we saw some sick stuff out of Deadly on TCA. He went absolutely insane recently, so fully expect him to be stepping up during this season as well.
Yeah, definitely. So you covered them off slightly, but what are your sort of predictions for the upcoming split in League of Legends if you had to pick a sort of top four?
If I had to pick a top four, I would say it's very difficult to say. It's very early, so don't kind of hold me to this too hard. But I would say probably I want to say M&M will finish first. The kind of ex-Manalite roster, They came second last time. They were the only team to really give the Banditos a run for their money. So I think they're fairly safe to say will be right at the top. TCA as well, though, very, very close between those two teams. So, I wouldn't be ridiculously surprised to see them manage to outgrow M&M if they can continue to improve and continue to work on some of their weaknesses. But then I'd say probably, other than those two, probably Choke and XL would be my number two and number three and number four slots.
Yeah, sure. And I think the only thing for me with M&M, some rumours I was hearing, and when this video goes out, it may already be cleared up. But I've heard that Rifty may be leaving to join Last Remedy, one of the new teams. So whether that changes things or not, obviously they'll if he does go, they'll still have that core four, but roster changes at last minute, UK scene.
I mean, it certainly could mix things up a little bit. I can't confirm or deny. I can't say I'm best mates with Rifty or anything, so I'm not in with all that gossip necessarily. But I know at the end of the day, roster changes can always be a spanner in the works when it comes down to it. So maybe it'll affect it, maybe it won't, maybe it'll all be fine. So I mean, maybe that doesn't even happen. I don't know, but I still think even if the roster swap goes through, replacing a one player isn't too bad, so long as they're not like your shot caller, so long as they're not like your leader, then it's generally okay and you can kind of move past it.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Deadly, and he got a pentakill at I-58, which is really cool. Are there any other sort of players we should be looking out for? We've had several big players in the UK Prem over the past year, and some of which have moved on to LCS teams now, in Alfari and Maxlaw. Are there any of those sort of players we should be looking out for that could go, could extend their career further?
So I think the number one lineup to be looking at in terms of that would be this M&M lineup once more. I think a few of those players are kind of on the cusp of being able to step into that kind of professional environment. I would also kind of give a little bit of a shout to some of the players on the other teams. You've got Scudzy, who's a pretty hyped up UK jungler. We've not really seen much of him in the past in terms of Premiership specifically, so I'm excited to see what he brings to the table and really kind of get a better idea of what level of a player he is, because I've heard about Scudzy, but I feel like I've cast him before in the past, but I can't say that I've got any standout moments from him in my memory. So I'm excited to see kind of what comes out of him as well. But I think there's a few players across the board that could be looking towards that. But again, this is one of those things that we kind of have to be looking at more towards the end of the season, because I'd say the biggest thing when it comes to moving into professional play isn't being able to pop off and get a highlight reel, it's being consistent.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I think this is an answer we can give a much clearer view on at the end of the season rather than the start.
Yeah, definitely. So should we move on to one of the other games then?
Yep.
Overwatch. How's that sort of shaping up? Because it's interesting. It's the first Overwatch UK Premiership. Was there anyone that sort of stood out to you in the qualifiers? I know that Team Endpoint have been, making waves in that area.
Yeah, Endpoint are definitely a force to be reckoned with. I think it's safe to say. I already did a fair bit of casting of the community cups and things for Overwatch within the UK scene, so I'm fairly in tune with most of the players and the teams, but I can't say I'll be able to give as in-depth insight as I can with League of Legends. Obviously, I've been casting that scene for years and years, and Overwatch is pretty much brand new. So I think that's one of the things that a lot of people haven't really clocked just yet, is that because of how new Overwatch is, there will likely be some kind of roster shuffling. There very likely will be some teams that aren't quite up to the same level as some of the top teams. I think it might be one of those seasons where we see a pretty clear divide between the top teams and then everybody else, because that's quite a common theme when it comes to a new game. So I think right now the teams I've got my eye on are Endpoint and Starspot. Those are the two top seeds for the Contender Cups, and when it comes to the players that I was casting during the Community Cups, some of the very top players are on these two teams. So on Starspot, you've got Christopher and Chipser, who were both on the Choke lineup, which that lineup was just dominating the Community Cups for a very long time, and then they kind of finally got toppled. But Christopher and Chipser were two of the absolute star players. Christopher kind of playing that more tanky role, a lot of Reinhardt from him, and Chipser, I would say, was easily the best Reaper out of the Community Cups, but it's kind of whether they can transfer that into the Premiership now. It's kind of stepping up, going up an extra notch now. There's actually prize money on the line. There's actually things, but there's more to win, I suppose, more to play for. But then you've also got Endpoint, obviously. Endpoint, I'd say, are the favourite. You've got Ayuki leading that, ex-League of Legends player himself. You've got Fantasy, the YouTuber, on that squad. But one of the big players that I'm watching on Endpoint right now is going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know exactly how to pronounce this name. I think it's just pronounced Swoosh, but it's Cwooch. Swoosh, something along those lines. I'm going to ask the guy when I get in a lobby with him.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, to be honest.
But he was absolutely going ballistic I-Series. His Genji was insane, so fully expect to see some big stuff out of him. But again, it's one of these where I don't know all of the players that well just yet. I'm still kind of getting into the UK scene, and I mean the UK scene for Overwatch is kind of still developing itself, so there's a lot of kind of uncharted territory when it comes to Overwatch, and that's one of the great things when it comes to the first season. It's like we had with Hearthstone last season. there was a few players that we just didn't really know a lot about, and we were very excited to get into that. And it's the exact same scenario now with Overwatch.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about Hearthstone, then, obviously last split's winner was Ball Control from Torpedo.
Yep.
Who should we look out for in this upcoming split? Because as I understand it, Torpedo have 4 players qualified.
Well, so we have a promotion tournament before we get into the actual group stage. So maybe Torpedo don't get all 4 players. But right now, you're right in saying that they have Ball Control. John Bray is the number 1 seed from the Contender Cups. He's on Torpedo. Ness, who won the first ever True Silver Championship, he's on Torpedo, and he's the 3rd seed from the Contender Cups. And then also Raven, he's in the promotions because he was in the bottom 4 of the last split. So if all 3 of them get through promotions, then Torpedo will have 4 players in the Premiership, which, I mean, fair play to them. They're obviously looking for a vice grip on the UKC. But yeah, for the promotions specifically, I'll talk about promotions rather than the group stage, because I feel like we should kind of take it as it comes.
Yeah.
We'll get promotions out of the way first, and then we'll talk about group stage predictions. But I think the big player to watch out for right now is going to be Ness. Ness is well known throughout the UK scene of Hearthstone, kind of a fairly well accomplished player himself, and I think we've kind of just been waiting for Ness to get into the Premiership. I think last season he couldn't join the Premiership because it was something to do with him not actually being able to play in the qualifiers at the time. So I think had he been able to, he would have been in the first season as well and could have been quite a big contender. So I fully expect Ness to qualify, and moving into the group stage, he could be a really, really big player, kind of a big factor, and potentially looking towards finals. He certainly has the history to do so. But I would also kind of say there's a player called Jambray who's also on Torpedo, and I hadn't really heard of this guy until the Contender Cups. Obviously, he's on Torpedo, so he's fairly well known within the scene. People know of him, but he doesn't have any crazy results right now to his name. So, with him being the 1st seed, I'm expecting to be pleasantly surprised by his performance. But as I say, I haven't got a huge amount to go off of in terms of what I've seen from him. And there's him and another player called Ting Ting. They're the 1st and 2nd seed, and they're kind of fulfilling this same role that we had from Hello Leroy and Mysterious last year, in that we didn't really know who they were, we didn't know what to expect from them, and then they ended up going all the way to playoffs. They were there at MCM playing on the big stage. So maybe we have a similar storyline coming out from John Bray and Ting Ting. Only time will tell.
There's been a lot of news and things around CSGO lately, and I know that the I-Series tournament was exciting. Kaz eSports won the UK Masters. What are your thoughts on CSGO going into the next split?
So CSGO is going to be an interesting one. That Kaz lineup currently isn't actually in the Premiership as well. So that'll be interesting to see whether some of those players join rosters that are in the Premiership, or maybe one of the Premiership teams kind of buys out that team or something. I don't really know what's going to happen there, but there's definitely a lot of UK talent on that Kaz roster that currently doesn't look like it's going to be in the Premiership. So I don't know kind of what the scenario will be there. But right now, in terms of the teams that I can guarantee are in the Premiership, you've got Fish 123 right at the very top of the Contender Cup seeding. I believe they are now going under the Infused name, but this is a team that's kind of got a lot of the UK big excuse me, the UK big names. I mean, they've got Weber on their squad, who Weber is a very well-known UK player, arguably the best player in the UK, or at least a lot of people believe that to be the case. So he's always going to be a player to watch, as far as I'm concerned. And then there's also a player on the team called Connor. Now, Connor, he was kind of a new kid on the block last season, and there was a lot of questions of, is he going to be able to kind of step up to this level? Is he going to be able to be one of these players at the very top of the UK scene? And Connor went all the way into the finals of last season on Reason Gaming. So there's a lot of potential for him to really kind of step out of that kind of new kid in school role and step into more of a been there, done that, I'm ready to win this time kind of that evolution almost of him as a player. And I'm really excited to see that. But also, Weber and Connor were on the same team last season. So there's kind of that synergy still being passed on. And I'm excited to see how that lineup is going to do this year. But as well, one of the kind of big storylines, I think, or at least from looking at what there is so far, is going to be, I don't know whether this team has been picked up by an org or not just yet, but there's the second seed right now in the Contender Cups was Orgless EPS. I don't know whether they're going to be picked up by an org or not, but regardless, as they move into the group stages, we've got this storyline of Robin versus Weber once more, which was a storyline in our grand finals last season. It was when it was the Working Men versus Reason. It was kind of Robin versus Weber, and with them being in my head the first and second seed, it's kind of likely that we see a very similar storyline develop once more. It's kind of these two very, very top tier players that they're more than able to kind of just carry a game single-handedly, and it's going to be kind of who can outperform the other once more. And it's starting to feel like that matchup specifically is becoming like an El Clasico within the UK scene.
Cool. And I know you mentioned Reason there. I should probably bring them up because those guys won the Overwatch tournament at iSeries last weekend. I'm unaware. Are they in the
That's
Premiership?
a French team, I believe.
Reason.
I believe that Reason lineup for Overwatch is a French lineup.
I see. Okay.
Don't quote me on that
No.
100%, but I'm pretty sure.
That's fine.
I know they were European at least. I'm
Gotcha.
pretty sure.
Gotcha. And Overwatch is a bit tricky, right? Because the ESL, as I understand it, the rules state you need a majority of players to be based in the UK. So for Overwatch, that means 4, right?
Yeah, 4 out of 6 have to be UK players. So, these teams are fully UK teams pretty much. Like, you can have 2 European players if you like, but there's no arguments really that can say these teams aren't UK teams, because there was kind of a bit of debate about it when the community cups were going on and we were looking towards Premiership. There was a bit of a debate about kind of whether it should be 3 out of 6 or 4 out of 6, but in the end we did a couple of community polls and things, and the votes heavily lent in favour of 4 out of 6 need to be UK to be the UK Premiership, so that's what we've gone with.
Okay, cool. So those are your sort of predictions then. What maybe you could tell us, Joe, a bit about your time casting for the Premiership, because like you say, your schedule's going to be pretty intense over the next couple of months. What are the challenges of covering 4 different games now? Because this is the first time we're going to have 4 different games in the Premiership.
So from my perspective, I'm casting all 4 of them. So from my perspective, one of the biggest challenges is just keeping up to date, basically, with everything. Obviously, once the Premiership kicks off, I kind of hunky-dory on that one in terms of like how the players are doing and how the teams are doing, because I'm going to be casting each and every game. So it'd be very difficult for me not to stay on top of it at that point. But in terms of like right now, this kind of preparation phase, these last few weeks for me have been all about trying to catch up with games that I've not really been keeping up with 100% in the UK scene, and kind of making sure that I'm talking to the players, getting an inside view of all these different lineups, finding out different opinions on the teams. And there's a lot of research that I have done, and there's a lot of research I still need to do in regards to each and every one of the games. But I think one of the major things is just, while I'm working, I pretty much always have some kind of stream on my other monitor of professional play of one of these 4 games, so that I can make sure that my knowledge of the meta is where it needs to be casting these games. Cool.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on the current state of UK esports as well, Joe? Because it's changed quite a bit this year, I think, and the prize pools are higher across the Premiership splits, and at iSeries as well, they increased the prize pools recently. So that's positive, but what are your views
Yep.
in general of the current state of the scene?
So I have a view that, as far as I can tell from recent events, not many people share. I don't know why, but I think there's been a little bit of kind of sensationalization of this idea that the UK scene is somehow dying, despite the fact that this last year has basically been the most successful year for the UK scene for like years and years and years, since like Counter-Strike 1.6, which is a long time ago now, guys. Um, like we have, out of the Premiership, League of Legends specifically, we have multiple players that have gone into both the LCS and the Challenger scene. In Counter-Strike, we have 2 players that have moved over to America to join a professional team. And like in Overwatch, in the Atlantic Showdown, we had multiple UK players across multiple teams. Reunite had 2 UK players. You mentioned, when we were talking earlier before the interview, you mentioned Seb Barton, Numlocked. He's been kind of the golden boy of the UK scene, if you will. He was doing really well in League of Legends. Now he's moved over to Overwatch and he's been picked up by Dignitas. So I think there's a lot of really positive stuff coming out of the UK scene right now, especially in terms of players. And Hearthstone as well. We've got like Ball Control, we've got Cypher. There's a few kind of big names that are UK players when it comes to Hearthstone. And I think player-wise, we're growing, we're getting there, we're starting to actually catch up with these other regions. And in terms of like, one of the biggest conversations that is always brought up when you talk about this topic is kind of the infrastructure not being there for the UK scene. I think we're getting there now. We're starting to actually build that up. We've got multiple seasons of the Premiership every year. iSeries have stepped up their game as well. Their eSports is getting much, much better. We've got Epic Land multiple times a year as well. That we're starting to actually get this kind of circuit of tournaments, which, to be honest, like when you look at the UK scene in a vacuum, sure, you can pick like holes in it, you can pick apart different aspects, but when you look at it comparatively to some of the other European scenes, the smaller scenes, like we're doing pretty damn well, like in terms of what tournaments there are. And like the European teams come over to play in our tournaments for a reason, because we have some pretty damn good tournaments. So I think there's a very negative view of the UK scene, but I think a lot of it is kind of mob mentality, and it's that Reddit effect, right, where someone says a controversial opinion and everyone decides to agree with it, and it gets voted to the top and then just becomes everyone's opinion. And I think a lot of the people haven't necessarily thought about all of the different factors involved in that. And I think the UK scene is definitely on the up and up. And I think a lot of kind of conversations that have been going on recently about the UK scene are somewhat unfounded. And I think I will just very brief. I don't want this to be a major talking point. I will very briefly mention that the Richard Lewis video, because I think that's kind of the root of this topic recently.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Yeah. I won't say much on this. I don't want to start a controversial conversation with it, but like I think a lot of what Richard Lewis said was accurate, but I think most of the conclusions he drew were kind of reaching almost. Like, so he had 3 examples of specific players and organizations and things, but you can't then go from those 3 examples and just extrapolate that everybody in the entire scene is terrible and it's just this toxic cesspool. That's just not the case. It's simply untrue. And I think a lot of that video was kind of sensationalization and like just trying to make it a bigger thing than it actually is. And I agree with him. Like in the specifics of the examples that he gave, I agree with him. Like, there's evidence there that those are facts and that's how it is. But I disagree that you can extrapolate from those examples that the entire scene is destined to fail. I think that's a massive exaggeration.
Yeah. No, cheers for your thoughts on that. And I think just before we leave it there, we mentioned before recording that you started off in Warcraft and that's where your name came from. What do you think of the new expansion? Have you had much time to play that?
I've barely touched it, unfortunately. I pre-bought it the second it was announced. I was ready and everything, but I've just moved into a new flat, so I have no internet at home. And with Premiership coming up, I've been incredibly busy anyway. So I've had an hour of gameplay so far. And I did I'm a bit of a lore nerd myself, so I'd already seen the cinematic at the start of the expansion on YouTube, from the beta. Like, I was way ahead of everyone, and I predicted. I don't want to spoil anything, so I don't want to go too in depth. But I predicted a certain character betraying a certain character. But yeah, I'm very excited for it. I've yet to actually give it a proper go though, but I'm very excited for the PvP aspects in this new expansion.
I was going to say, you know, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent now, but it's a shame to me that Warcraft isn't quite there in the esports space. I know it's not super exciting to watch. There's a lot of numbers. And it's very confusing to non-players. You know, could it get there at some point, or maybe if they do a sequel or something?
I would love for World of Warcraft to be esports. Like, it's a game that's very close to my heart. It's a game I'm actually very good at. It's one of the few games that I'm actually very good at. And I would love to cast it. I still keep up with the meta and everything, even when I'm not playing the game. I still follow it. But unfortunately, I think in my head, there's two issues with World of Warcraft in terms of esports. Number one, it's just very difficult to watch. Like, there is no spectator client. It's an add-on you have to download to do spectator. But it's I don't know. In terms of like actually watching the game, I think the way it needs to be done really is like player perspectives. I think that would be the way to spectate it, because right now the way it's done is kind of a free cam, but you don't really get a lot of the detail of like how people are doing combos and things like that. So I feel like it misses a large aspect of what the PvP is about. And then I think the other aspect is just that, to some extent, and this will hurt some people's feelings, I think, but to some extent World of Warcraft PvP is essentially rock, paper, scissors. Assuming that players play correctly, you'll have three top compositions. This one A will beat B, B will beat C, and C will beat A. And it's kind of just how lucky you get in the bracket. That's how it's been historically. Maybe they fixed that in this upcoming expansion, I don't know, but that's how I see World of Warcraft PvP right now. And I'd love for that not to be the case, but I don't really think it's going to kick off that much.
Yeah, same here. So, yeah, thanks for all your comments, Joe. Is there anything else you want to add about the upcoming split, or anything else we might have missed?
No, just make sure to tune in. The first broadcast is going to be on the 5th, which is the Counter-Strike promotions. We'll have the 5th and 6th are both going to be Counter-Strike promotions. And then the 7th is League of Legends, and the 8th is Hearthstone. So, or maybe League of Legends and Hearthstone are the wrong way around, in fact. It's the 8th for League of Legends and 7th for Hearthstone. But make sure you tune in. Across September, there is going to be a lot of Premiership going on, and heading into October as well. Overwatch starts on the 20th of September, so it's all kicking off finally. I'm ready to sink my teeth into some UK esports.
Excellent. Okay, thanks very much, Joe. And yeah, cheers for watching, guys.
No problem. See you later, guys.